Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/Animal Stories for Kids. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was an Arowana named Ihani. Ihani the Arowana lived by a riverbank where the trees that grew next to the waters grew branches that hung low above the waters. Ihani was a very determined fish. Whenever she really wanted to do something, nothing could stop her from doing it. One day, Ihani the Arowana was hanging out by the riverbank with the other Arowanas. They were enjoying the day and eating the insects that were found along the branches that hung low above the river water. Ihani jumped up out of the water to eat the insects that were on the branches. It was always the same small crickets that all the other Arowanas were eating too. "These crickets are everywhere," said Ihani the Arowana. "I wonder if there are other insects than crickets out today." And while the other Arowanas were jumping out of the water to eat the crickets on the branches, Ihani the Arowana thought to herself, "There has to be different kinds of insects out today instead of these small crickets." So Ihani swam around to see what else she could find on the low-hanging branches by the riverbank. She didn't mind eating crickets, but they weren't filling her up as much today. She just had to find something else. And as Ihani swam around, she saw some worms on another branch, but the branch was a little higher. So Ihani said, "Oh, a worm. And that looks a little higher, but not that high. Easy." And Ihani the Arowana jumped out of the water and caught the worm in her mouth and ate it. "Okay," said Ihani, "I think I can eat these." So Ihani the Arowana ate the worms, and she had to jump a little higher, but it wasn't too high, and she was able to eat the worms. Ihani said, "These worms are great and all, but I wonder if there's anything bigger." And although she didn't mind eating the crickets or the worms, she was hungry and wanted something bigger. She swam around again looking for something bigger. And as she was swimming around, she swam by the other Arowanas who were enjoying the crickets, and some were also enjoying the worms as well. For Ihani, she was determined to find something bigger for herself, and nothing was going to stop her. So even though she was still hungry, and swimming around looking for something bigger was actually making her more hungry, she wasn't interested in jumping for crickets and worms anymore. And as she swam around, she finally saw what she was looking for. A nice, big grasshopper, just on a branch that was way higher than any of the other branches that Ihani had ever jumped up to. "Wow! I wonder how high that grasshopper is, and if I could get up there," said Ihani the Arowana. So Ihani thought about what to do, and as she was thinking and staring at the grasshopper, it started to move around and it left. Ihani said, "Okay, this is not the end. I'll come back and see if that grasshopper comes back." And Ihani swam away to finish off her day. Every day, Ihani the Arowana would swim in the same spot, and she would always see the grasshopper perched up on the same high branch. Ihani took this as a challenge, and she actually tried to jump up to get to the grasshopper. But she was always so far away that the grasshopper didn't even notice. Ihani the Arowana would come back day after day to study the grasshopper's movements and its patterns. Maybe she could figure out something and use it to somehow get close to the grasshopper. When Ihani wasn't observing and studying the grasshopper, she was attempting to jump up and get close. She was the only fish that was jumping up out of the water over and over in the middle of the riverbank. The other Arowanas didn't know what she was doing or why she would even waste her time and energy on something that was impossible to do. They were just happy with eating their crickets and worms. And Ihani the arowana would keep trying to jump higher and higher. She even tried giving herself a head start and swimming up to the point where she would just jump up and it would get her much higher than any of the other arowanas. But she still had a lot more to go to even get close to where the grasshopper was. The other arowanas noticed Ihani being able to jump up almost twice her normal height, but she was still so far from the grasshopper. It would take the tree branch to actually lower a few feet down for her to be able to catch the grasshopper at all. But the branch never moved. It just stayed in one place every day. Finally, Ihani was so tired and discouraged from not being able to jump high enough. She said, "I really thought I could reach it if I just worked hard enough. I can jump higher now than any of the other arowanas, but that tree branch is still way too high." And as she was about to turn around, she stopped and she saw a heron flying down and gracefully landing on the same branch the grasshopper was on. Ihani the arawana's heart sank. She was shattered. All of her hard work, and she couldn't even get close, and out of nowhere, a heron comes and it's going to eat up the grasshopper. However, the heron sensed Ihani's fear and disappointment, and it spoke to her in a gentle voice. "Why do you torment yourself so, little one?" the heron asked. Ihani poured out her heart and explained what she did and how hard it was and how she still couldn't get to the grasshopper. The heron listened patiently and said to Ihani the arowana, "Perhaps all your hard work was not a waste, little one. Perhaps the hard work has been preparing you for this very moment." Ihani's eyes widened with curiosity. The heron continued, "It is not by any random reason that I ended up landing on this branch, although I did just land to rest my wings. But you must not think of this as a coincidence. What is happening right now is aligning with all the hard work you have been doing in preparation." Ihani said, "Preparation? I didn't know I was preparing for anything." "Your hard work has not been for nothing," the heron reassured her. "It has brought you to this point where opportunity meets preparation." Then the heron pointed its beak and looked at the grasshopper. And Ihani the arowana also looked at the grasshopper and then looked at the heron. And the heron looked at Ihani and nodded its head. "It's all yours," said the heron. Ihani's spirit grew. She could now see that the heron lowered the branch just enough for her to jump up as high as she could. She said to the heron, "Thank you for the opportunity." And with her newfound hope, Ihani the arowana swam back a little and pushed herself as fast as she could, and she shot up out of the water with every last ounce of energy she had in her, and she rose up higher and higher with her eyes fixed on the grasshopper, and with a triumphant snap, Ihani's jaws closed around the grasshopper, and she made a mighty splash in the water as she victoriously ate the tastiest grasshopper she ever had in her whole life. The heron said, "Well done. You deserve it." And it flew away into the sunset. Ihani enjoyed her meal and was happy because she worked hard and didn't give up. And she realized that all her hard work was not a waste, but they were getting her ready for when the right moment came. She also realized that now she was able to find bigger food on the higher branches. And the arowana lived happily ever after. The end. Arowanas belong to the family of Osteoglossidae and are also known as bony tongues, just like Arapaimas. Arowanas are long, with a narrow body that makes them almost look like an eel, and they live in freshwater and can be found in rivers, ponds, lakes, throughout Asia, South America, and Australia. They are closely related to the Arapaima. There are different kinds of arowanas: the silver arowana, black arowana, southern Saratoga, northern Saratoga, Asian arowana, and Myanmar arowana. Arowanas are bony fish that are covered with scales, and the different species come in a variety of colors. They have a flat, slender body with a large mouth that faces upwards. This shape helps them breathe oxygen at the surface of the water, as well as catch any food they could find. Arowanas are opportunistic feeders. They eat insects like crickets, roaches, worms, grasshoppers, locusts, and flies. They can also eat crustaceans like crabs, shrimp, and snails, or other fish, and they can even eat other small animals. Arowanas have great eyesight, and it helps them spot their meals on the water or even above the water. Arowanas can jump very well and have been seen to jump up to 6.5 feet out of the water to eat insects and other small animals off the low-hanging branches of trees. Arowanas have a bony tongue, and they have some teeth on their tongue and in the roof of their mouths and the bottom of their mouths. Arowanas also have small barbels that come out from underneath their mouths that act as sensors. Arowanas are paternal mouth brooders, which means that the male fish takes care of the eggs and the young fish in its mouth. Male arowanas carries the eggs in his mouth and watches over them for a few weeks, and the small fish will continue to live in the male fish's mouth until they're ready to feed on their own. Have you ever seen a real-life arowana before? If you have, where did you see it? If you want to write to us, ask your parent to email us at animalstoriesforkids@gmail.com and tell us what you think of our stories. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/animalstoriesforkids. Until next time, bye!